Forget the movie version of the Old West. The reality was brutal, dirty, and without heroes. Subscribe to our channel and leave some hype on the video to help us out. Number 1. Sam Bass, the train robber who got ratted out by one of his own. In 1877, Bass and his gang stopped a Union Pacific train in Nebraska and made off with $60,000 in gold coins. That was enough money to buy a whole ranch back then. The problem is a hit like that draws way too much attention. The Texas Rangers wanted Bass at any cost, and they got him. One of his own gang members, Jim Murphy, made a secret deal with the law. He gave up the plan for the next robbery in Round Rock, Texas. When Bass showed up in town, the Rangers were already waiting. The shootout didn't last long. Bass got shot in the back and died 2 days later on his own birthday. He was 27. In the Old West, trusting the wrong person could cost you your life. Number 2. The barbed wire wars. Did you know a simple wire sparked one of the bloodiest conflicts in Texas? In the early 1880s, wealthy ranchers started fencing off millions of acres with barbed wire, blocking roads, water sources, and land that cowboys had been using for decades. The small ranchers didn't just sit back. They formed nighttime gangs called fence cutters and destroyed more than half the state's fences in just 2 years. The response was brutal. Ambushes, homes burned down with families inside and bodies showing up on the roads. The conflict got so violent the governor had to send the Texas Rangers to restore order. An invention that cost pennies per yard ended up costing hundreds of lives. Number 3. Soapy Smith started his criminal career on the streets of Denver in the 1880s with a simple trick. He sold bars of soap, promising that some had money bills wrapped inside. His partners would pretend to buy and win right in front of the crowd. The scam sounds dumb, but it worked so well that Smith piled up enough cash to control gambling halls and bribe politicians in Colorado. When the Klondike Gold Rush blew up, he headed to Alaska to run the same setup on miners desperate to get rich. His reign didn't last long. In July 1898, in a turf dispute in Skagway, a local vigilante landed a fatal shot on him. Smith was 38. Number 4. The Pleasant Valley Feud. War started over missing cattle and a torn-down fence in 1880s Arizona. The Tewksburys and the Grahams were neighbors who turned into deadly enemies. What nobody expected was that a ranch fight would leave a trail of blood for nearly a decade. Men were hunted like animals, ambushed on their own land, whole families destroyed. When the dust settled, almost all the adult men in both clans were dead. The few who were left spent the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders. Historians still argue about how many really died because a lot of bodies were simply never found. Number 5. Cathay Williams, 1866. You're looking at the only documented woman who served in the U.S. Army disguised as a man during the 19th century. Cathay was born enslaved in Missouri, and when the Civil War ended, she didn't have many options. So she did something nobody expected. She enlisted as William Cathay in the 38th Infantry Regiment, a unit of black soldiers. For 2 years, she marched hundreds of miles across New Mexico and Arizona, going through the same brutal training as any other recruit. Doctors examined her when she enlisted and didn't notice anything. It was only when she got seriously sick that a closer exam revealed the truth. The Army discharged her immediately. No honors, no pension, no recognition. Number 6. The El Paso Salt War. Did you know that in 1877, Americans and Mexicans killed each other over salt? Sounds like a joke, but it isn't. For generations, poor families from Texas and Mexico collected salt freely from the dry lakes near El Paso. It was tradition, livelihood, survival until a group of Anglo politicians and businessmen decided to fence it all off and charge for it. The Mexican community didn't accept that. What came next was brutal. Ambushes, executions, lynchings on both sides. The Texas Rangers were called in and some ended up dead. Washington sent federal troops for the first time since the Civil War to restore order in Texas. All of that over salt. It shows how greed can turn anything into a battlefield. Number 7. Billy the Kid was 21 when he died, and the law had already lost track of how many people he'd killed. His real name was William Henry McCarty Jr. He was orphaned from his mother at 14 and soon slipped into a life of crime. The funny thing is a lot of people in New Mexico saw him as a kind of Old West Robin Hood. He defended poor families against powerful ranchers during the Lincoln County War. But the reality was a whole lot messier. Billy killed without thinking twice. Some estimates put it at 21 deaths, one for each year of his life. Sheriff Pat Garrett finally got him in 1881. To this day, nobody really knows where the outlaw ends and the legend people created begins. Number 8. The gunfight at the OK Corral happened on October 26, 1881 in Tombstone, Arizona. Wyatt Earp, his brothers, and Doc Holliday faced off against the Clanton and McClory brothers in a clash that lasted only 30 seconds. 3 men died right there. The story we know paints Wyatt as a lawman hero, but documents from the time tell a different story. Witnesses said the Clantons were unarmed when the bullets started flying. Wyatt himself later went on trial for murder. He avoided conviction, but the doubt stuck around. Was that justice or personal revenge? The Earps had old beef with that group. Some historians today believe it was a planned execution, not a fair duel. Number 9. In March 1882, Wyatt Earp crossed a line a lot of people never come back from. After his brothers Morgan and Virgil were ambushed, one dead and the other mutilated, he ditched his marshal's badge and put together his own revenge squad. 4 weeks, Wyatt and his men hunted the suspects across Arizona with no warrant, no judge, no jury. They executed at least 4 men in confrontations that some people call justice and others call cold-blooded murder. The federal government even issued an arrest warrant for him. Wyatt ran off to Colorado and was never put on trial. The question that remains, hero or outlaw? Maybe both at the same time. Number 10. Laura Bullion learned early on that life didn't go easy on anyone. The daughter of an outlaw, she grew up in Texas around bandits and ended up joining the Wild Bunch, Butch Cassidy's crew. But here's the detail most people don't know. She wasn't just another face. Laura was the gang's go-to for forging checks and documents. While the men robbed trains, she handled the dirty money. In 1901, the law finally caught her in St. Louis with stolen bills in her purse. She served her time and disappeared. She spent decades working as a seamstress in Memphis, living quietly until she died in 1961. The woman who helped steal thousands simply became an ordinary lady that nobody recognized on the street. 11. Clay Allison was the kind of guy you didn't want to run into on a bad day. And for him, every day seemed like a bad day. This Texan got a reputation in the Old West, not just for the shootouts he won, but for what he did afterward. They say he would cut off parts of the men he killed and show them off as trophies, a sick ritual that spread fear wherever he went. He survived duels, ambushes, and saloon brawls. It seemed like no bullet could take him down. But here's the part nobody expected. In 1887, Clay fell off his own wagon and the wheel rolled right over his neck. He died right there on the road. The gunman who terrorized the West wasn't taken down by any rival. It was a dumb accident that ended the story. Number 12, Ned Christie. This guy was a blacksmith and a Cherokee politician respected in Indian Territory. In 1887, a federal deputy turned up dead and someone pointed the finger at Christie. The problem, he wasn't even at the crime scene. Christie refused to turn himself into a white man's court that had already decided he was guilty. For 5 years, he held out on his property, building a fortified house with thick wooden walls. The marshals tried everything. Shootouts, sieges, ambushes. Nothing worked until in 1892 they brought in an improvised cannon and 40 pounds of dynamite. They blew the whole fortress apart. Christie died fighting. Years later, another man confessed to the original murder. Christie was innocent the whole time. Number 13, Lottie Dino. This woman would sit down at poker tables in Texas in the 1870s and walk away with her pockets full. The men thought they were going to get an easy win against an elegant lady. Big mistake. Lottie owned the cards like few pros of the time could. Doc Holliday played against her and walked away impressed. The funny thing is nobody really knows where she learned all of it. Some say her father taught her. Others talk about a mysterious gambler in New Orleans. After building up a fortune, she simply vanished from the saloon world. She got married, changed her name, and became a respected citizen in New Mexico. The same woman who cleaned out ranchers and gunmen ended up running charity groups. Number 14. Canyon Diablo popped up in 1881 in Arizona when the Atlantic and Pacific Railroad stopped there. A 75-mile canyon that would take 2 years to build a bridge across. In that time, workers and opportunists turned the place into a nightmare. The town had 14 saloons, gambling houses, and zero law. The first sheriff lasted only hours on the job before he was murdered. The ones who followed didn't have any better luck. The cemetery grew so fast it earned the nickname Boot Hill. When the bridge was finished in 1882, the railroad moved on. Within weeks, Canyon Diablo completely emptied out. Today, only ruins are left in the desert, a reminder that quick fortune usually comes with way too high a price. Number 15. In 1890, a religious dance scared the U.S. government so much that troops massacred nearly 300 unarmed Lakota at Wounded Knee. The ghost dance was born out of hunger and desperation on the reservations. A Paiute prophet named Wovoka promised that dancing would bring back the vanished buffalo and the dead ancestors. Washington took it as an armed uprising. The army surrounded camps, confiscated weapons, and in a tense moment opened fire with Hotchkiss machine guns. Women, children, the elderly. There was no distinction. Soldiers later received medals of honor. A peaceful prayer ended as one of the most brutal episodes of the Indian Wars, bearing along with it the last dreams of resistance from the Plains peoples. Number 16. Quanah Parker was the last Comanche chief to surrender to the U.S. Army, but his story goes way beyond that. Born to a white woman captured in a raid and a Comanche warrior, he spent his whole life between two worlds. After years of fighting against white expansion, Quanah realized the war was lost and switched strategies. He started negotiating directly in Washington, traveling by train, staying in hotels, and sitting at tables with politicians and businessmen. Here he appears in a tux, what white people wore to formal meetings, without giving up parts of his Comanche identity. The man who used to hunt buffalo on the plains was now playing the winner's political game to make sure his people survived. Number 17. In 1856, Richard Barter pulled off California's biggest gold robbery. His gang attacked a mule carrying $80,000 in gold bars. The plan went wrong when half the crew got arrested in the mountains. Barter buried part of the gold somewhere in the Sierra Nevada and went back to retrieve it later. He never managed to. In 1859, he died in a shootout with the law, taking the secret to the grave. Since then, hundreds of people have searched those mountains. Some never came back. The strange thing is nobody really knows how much gold was buried or if it's still there. But that doesn't stop anyone. Every year, new people show up digging holes, swearing they found clues everyone else missed. Number 18. Harvey Logan, known as Kid Curry, was considered by the Pinkerton Agency itself to be the most dangerous man in the Old West. That wasn't an exaggeration. While Butch Cassidy became a romantic legend, Curry did the Wild Bunch's dirty work. A specialist in taking out anyone who got in his way, he racked up at least 9 lawmen kills. In 1904, after a train robbery in Colorado, he was cornered by a posse near Glenwood Springs. Wounded and with no way out, he made a choice that still puzzles historians today. He pointed his revolver at his own head and pulled the trigger. Some say it was pride, others say it was fear of the gallows. The truth died with him in that ravine. Number 19. An alliance the history books would rather forget. For decades, runaway slaves found refuge among the Seminoles in Florida. But it wasn't just a hiding place. They married, raised families, and took up arms side by side. The U.S. government spent more than $40 million and lost around 1,500 soldiers trying to break that bond. There were 3 wars between 1816 and 1858. Washington's generals didn't expect to face black and native warriors fighting like brothers. That coalition held out longer than any other slave revolt on the continent. Why did you never hear about this in school? Maybe because this story shows something a lot of people would rather erase from the nation's memory.